15 years ago when I got my start in marketing was I didn't use HubSpot. My company didn't use HubSpot. But if I wanted to learn anything about marketing, I just went to HubSpot.com, went to all the resources, read, listened, watched, learned. And when I came over to Loxo, I saw there's a lot of individual thought leaders in the recruitment space, but there's no one company that's really pioneering the like, here's how you can be the best recruiter possible. Here's the different playbooks to use. Here's the philosophies to run. And regardless of if you use our platform or not, we're like, that's our opportunity to really lead the charge, because again, we're creating a new category that is fundamentally different from what they've all seen. They're all using an applicant tracking system and then buying 10 different other tools to bolt on their integrations to that. Whereas we've got everything in one spot that mirrors like how recruiters actually do their recruitment workflow today.
Today, I'm thrilled to have Sam on the show. Sam will tell us how to pronounce his surname in a few minutes. But what I really like, I'm following him for a while on LinkedIn. He's a VP of marketing at Loxo with a strong background in demand generation. I got to know him when he started to work for Refine Labs, and then off and on, talking about sports, about psychology, about working out, ABM, so a lot of stuff. One thing that you might not know about Sam, and it's kind of interesting because it ties me to him a little bit more. He was playing football, soccer, however do we call it, and thought he's going to be maybe a professional soccer player or even a physical therapist. I played basketball when I was younger. So talking about twists and all those kind of things, we'll talk about connections with what we do today. But Sam, first, I want to welcome you to the podcast. And second thing, let's kick it off. If you can pick a superpower for your marketing team, what would it be, and how do you think it would change your day to day? So a superpower.
Oh man. Well, thanks for having me. Superpower. I don't want to go with something super obvious that everyone would do, but honestly, I would say super speed, even though it is pretty obvious. I mean, we're a startup. We like to move fast. And we're always experimenting and testing. So just be able to go through iteration after iteration after iteration to just know what's working, what isn't, and just getting to that perfect state, which, 30, 60, 90 days is going to change. But to be able to get to that, that's the most fun. I would love to be able to fly through that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that answer. So I'm always saying, like startups, and even, if you're starting an agency, a consultancy, whatever it is, you have this advantage that you're the smaller from your competitors, right? And if you don't use it, well, what are you actually doing?
Yeah. No, it is a superpower because there's so much red tape at the big companies. They can't move fast. They can't make quick decisions. So if you can do that and stay on top of things, that is your advantage.
Yeah. So before we get into all those things, how do you pronounce the surname?
Kuehnle. It's a lot easier than it looks.
Kuehnle. Yeah, nice. I was having some, because I have a lot of friends in Germany and those kind of things, and I was thinking more to pronounce it like German pronounce the surname.
It would be. It's German. That's what happens. Ellis Island great grandfather came over, and Ellis Island Americanized it. So it would be Kuehnle would be the normal way.
Yeah. I was listening to a guy talking about geopolitics and those kind of things, and that's when I found out that a lot of people from Germany actually moved to the US and assimilated, and now are part of the country basically.
Yeah. Yep.
Nice, super cool. So talking about soccer and all these things, let's start with sports. I knew a lot. I learned a lot of things because I was kind of a captain of the team, and my father was a coach. So I want it or not, I needed to speak to media to learn how to lead the team, all those kind of things. But I want to ask you, is there anything that you learn when it comes to the soccer skills? Obviously not to hit the ball, but something else that you actually are implementing now in your career?
Well, I can't say headbutting my computer in response to when we lose a deal. So if that's off the table, I'd say it's probably tacky, but just the general teamwork side of it. And I mean, that comes back to, so I played football. Like no one player is responsible for a win or loss, right? Like there's 11 people on the field. Who's more important, the center back or the striker? Well, they're both equally important in their own way. You can't win if one of them's not doing their job. So to me, I'd say that is probably the biggest part, and it's something that I've seen in the hiring space, especially people who have athletic backgrounds. It's fascinating to understand and watch them as the roles that they take within the organizations, the leadership positions that they take within the organizations, and how their overall team structure, like how many more of them are more effective in their roles and accomplishing the goals when they have that type of background.
Nice. That's something interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But do you find that a lot of people have, that kind of background and can actually, adjust to the different teams and all those things?
Yeah, it's not a huge amount. I don't have any data. We're actually going to have someone on our podcast in a bit who works specifically, because what we've seen is previous, like we call it competitive athletes. So usually it's like college level, professional at that level. A lot of veterans and military backgrounds can contain this skill set as well. So I'm sure we could run population reports and understand how many people played at that level, but I would guess sub 10% or so of the population.
Yeah, I guess so. Something like that. One thing, and to be honest, I asked ChatGPT, and it gave me a great question. So, and I was thinking about the answer as well. So, like, is there anything in when it comes to implementing marketing strategy that equals a last minute goal? Like, how good is this question? Tell me.
I mean, I guess I look back at yesterday. So today's October 1st, and we're recording this. Yesterday was our end of quarter, and at the beginning of the day, and seeing how we were performing to our revenue targets to the end of the day, I'd say that was probably the equivalent, because I watched us literally hit our revenue target in the afternoon of the final day of the quarter. So that's probably kind of similar
Nice.
to like the last minute goal, so to speak. But other than that, I can't think of too many other examples.
Yeah, usually that's it. All, like last minute goal usually happens when you grind your way to the game, and
Hmm.
the goal comes as a reward sometimes.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so let's kick things off with a question that we got from one of the previous guests, Charlie de Tribo. He said you guys decided to turn off brand search, which is very unusual, albeit logical in B2B world. That could be interesting topic to cover, including the decision-making process. So, and usually that is something that not many companies do, right?
Hmm.
Usually they go to search, they even put the search under the performance max campaigns. They don't separate it. So all these things, let's jump right into all these things and learn about it.
Yeah. So, controversial opinion, thought, as we did and our paid search campaigns. I will say, and I've wrote posts about this, I've talked about it a couple times in our podcast. I will say this is not for everyone. And there's a lot of data analysis and decision making that went behind the ability to choose that for us. So I've worked at organizations where paid search was one of our best channels. And I came over to Loxo, and it unfortunately was not. So what it comes down to is really understanding not just the top level, how many leads do you get and everything else, but really tracking it through. And why I say you can do this with paid search much easier than you can with more of like a brand awareness channel like LinkedIn, paid social, Reddit, any of those, is because paid search really is much more of a demand capture. Like, people are finally going to Google to say, I have a problem. What is the best HR software out there? I'm typing that in. I want an answer. I want to go and talk to them. So because that's the kind of conversion point where they go into our funnel, I can go and look and see like how effective is that in accomplishing driving new customer acquisition. And you can go to our website. Our pricing is very much visible. It's on the first page. Our base package starts at $119 per month. So you can quickly run the numbers to see, well, if Google cost per clicks on these super competitive terms in our space, which are $80 to $100 per click, if it's $100 per click, we know a great conversion rate might be 10% on a non-brand campaign. So all of a sudden that shoots up to $800 per lead. When that, you have your conversion to opportunity to closed won. So you win those at, I don't know, another 10%. That's $8,000 acquisition. And I just told you our starting price is $119 per month. So run the numbers, we're upside down very quickly. And so what I look at is just what's our acquisition cost and the payback period on it. And we have many other channels in our holistic, just inbound engine drives a CAC payback period. We're sitting about 3 months right now from just an ad spend side. So when I go and I compare those numbers, I'm like, I could get 3 months over here, or I can get 18 months over here. Well, that doesn't make sense, especially if we're far from the point of diminishing returns with these other spots. So that's why I looked at it from just a very analytical lens and said, like, yes, we can do this. It's not driving new customers for us, but it is 6 times more inefficient than these others. So let's go fund these places until we do start to creep up on the point of diminishing returns. We can always expand back into search if we want, when we get more budget, when we need to. But for now, that's just not the best use of our limited startup funds.
Yeah, I love that. And there is one thing that you're mentioning, and I keep reminding people that, like us marketers are very, at least the best ones are very analytical people, right? And we look at the math and we compare things and we plan based on those things. We are not just like looking at creative side of the things. There's other
Playing with
side which is,
crayons.
yeah, much more important. But there are some other things. Let's just talk it through. So you use the numbers and look and all those things. Sometimes it can be like that your SEO side is working really well, and that you don't need a brand search from that perspective. Or it might be that you maybe don't have a lot of competitors in the niche, right? So you can use just organic and you go through it. There are a lot of stuff, simple things that you need to analyze to kind of find
Yes.
the answers to all those stuff.
All the variables. And there's no one right. Every company is going to be different based on your brand presence, what your competitors are doing, how expensive cost per clicks are, where your organic positioning is, and what you're doing with all those. So that's why I say it's like, this isn't blanket advice that I go and give people. Stop running Google ads. That's the farthest thing I say is like, do your own due diligence before you ever make a decision whether you should even invest in it in the first place, whether you should keep it running, or if it's not as efficient as other places.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, what are some misconceptions that you usually see around the demand generation? Like, if you look at LinkedIn, it's a huge box, but everybody keeps repeating the same
Yeah.
things, no matter the industry, the size of the company, the size of the market, everything. They keep repeating the same things, and I think it gets people to kind of like go and introduce wrong things, wrong strategies as their own, because basically they get the echo from LinkedIn. They say, that will certainly work for us.
Yeah. So I'll give 2 answers, Todd. I'll give an answer to those who are not in our echo chamber, and then an answer to those who kind of are in the echo chamber, are a little bit more active. So to those who are not in the echo chamber, I would say like the biggest misconception about demand gen is thinking like that it's all funnels, data, and volume. Spend more, do more. Everything is more, more, more. That's your only lever for demand generation. Just how do we get more at the top, and then it's going to follow through the funnel. Farthest thing from the truth. You know, I was just talking about data for a second ago. So I'd say that's probably the broad side. The more detailed answer I'd probably say is like the most successful demand generation managers, directors, VPs are true generalists, and I wouldn't even call them demand gen marketers. I'd just call them a marketer, because they are responsible for acquisition. So again, that's like demand and performance marketing. They are needing to understand like what's their messaging and positioning that works best. So that's product marketing. Process and optimization. How do you make the most of your funnel and everything else? That's marketing operations. You're going to be taking a lot of experiments, iterative approaches, big swings. That's like creative and content side of the house. So you're not just this one, like the T-shaped marketer, right? That's demand generation. That's all you know. But really the most successful people and organizations in this space, they might carry demand gen title, but I would just call them, they're just a marketer.
That's kind of interesting now, because when I look at the things in, for example, Europe versus the US, right? And in Europe, usually marketers are generalists. And when you go to work for the US company, they say, okay, you are the generalist, but in which field?
We have to put you on a team. We have to put you in
Yeah,
like a
yeah,
sub
yeah.
department. Yeah, it's like you only ever see a VP of marketing or a CMO just carry the marketing title. But as soon as that, they have the like, well, we have to have a demand team, we have to have a product team, we have to have an operations team, and then all the titles flow from there. So I don't know. Maybe it's a curse of org charts. Maybe it's like the over specialization, or big company versus small company. Small companies follow the paths of what the big companies set in place. Like, oh, we have to call it that. Well, I don't know. To your point, it's been working just fine in Europe.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I usually say, and that's why U.S. companies kind of are always cautious when they work from strategies or marketers from Europe, because it's totally different beast, right? In Europe, startup in one phase is, for example, like I don't know, 10 people, a early stage startup. In the US, it can be 150 people,
Yeah.
because it's different mindset, different
Hmm.
funding available, all those things. And then will you be able to use all the variables in your advantage or no?
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a good point.
Perfect. Okay, so let's get to the topic that everybody likes to talk about: creating demand versus closing demand. But tell me about your company and how do you guys do it? Let's talk from the practical perspective.
Yeah, yeah. So a little background on our company. So we're in the recruiting software space, which everyone knows, like Martech, sales tech, HR tech is massive. Every company, you need people in order to work. That's your biggest asset. So how do you recruit people and everyone else? So as you can imagine, applicant tracking systems and everything that you need to recruit an individual, throw a rock, you're going to hit 100 of them. Like I was on G2 the other day. I think there was something like over 300 different competitors just within one category of recruitment CRM, which is absolutely wild. So we're playing in that space. We're creating a new category with what we do, just how our product is set up. I'll get into that later. But the biggest thing that we're trying to come up against, and this is going to inform how do we balance them, is we win deals at very, very, very high rates. When I was at Refine Labs, I'd never seen anything like this. So that gives you a sense of like our problem is awareness. Just not enough people know
Mhm.
about us. How do we get them to become familiar with Loxo? Because once they are familiar with Loxo, they choose us at wildly high rates. So, how do I balance demand creation and demand capture at Loxo? Well, that kind of informs what I spoke to you a second ago there. It's very heavy on the demand creation side. And it's like, call it demand creation, call it brand awareness, call it whatever you want. Like, we're not getting into like what you want to
Of course,
name things
yeah.
here specifically, but it's just helping people to understand who are we, what do we help them solve, what are the common problems or items that recruiters coming up against that we can help them with. And the approach that we're taking with it is, I call it was the HubSpot approach to marketing 15 years ago when I got my start in marketing. Was I didn't use HubSpot, my company didn't use HubSpot, but if I wanted to learn anything about marketing, I just went to hubspot.com, went to all the resources, read, listened, watched, learned. And when I came over to Loxo, I saw there's a lot of individual thought leaders in the recruitment space, but there's no one company that's really pioneering the like, here's how you should, here's how you can be the best recruiter possible. Here's the different playbooks to use. Here's the philosophies to run. And regardless of if you use our platform or not, like we're like, that's our opportunity to really lead the charge because again, we're creating a new category that is fundamentally different from what they've all seen. They're all using an applicant tracking system and then buying 10 different other tools to bolt on their integrations to that. Whereas we've got everything in one spot that mirrors like how recruiters actually do their recruitment workflow today. So that's what we're saying. Tech hasn't kept up with the modern day recruitment workflow. Let us help you understand like you're already doing this workflow. You just don't realize the way you're doing it isn't the most effective way of that. So that's what we're saying. Like we're teaching best practices, we're educating, we're informing and going about that. And then when they think of modern recruitment, they're now associated to us. And when they ever start to think like something's not working right, what could we be doing better? They come to our website, check us out. And then it just that cycle keeps repeating and repeating, repeating until they're just like, let's actually go and look at them and explore what this difference is.
I'm listening to you and I'm like, okay, because I was working with a startup, advising them as a mentor. And they
Mm-hmm.
usually do, they're in the same space as you are, just not the CRM, but
Okay.
basically they're just choosing the category, very early stage, but they were able to close a couple of big accounts. And basically they use psychometric tests to
Mm-hmm.
help recruiters actually scale the info about the applicants,
Mm-hmm.
right? And now they are going in between. Should we call ourselves as a consultant for that? Should we use AI in naming the category? Should we actually get into all of this? But one thing that I see similar is they onboard clients very fast,
Mm-hmm.
and that happens. So they were like, okay, we need to spread the word about what we do, how do we do it, why is that different, why did all those things need to change.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the thing. You will get to the point when you need to involve sales-led growth and all those things after that. But if
Mm-hmm.
you have an easy onboard, and the entrance is very low, so you go and you just get as many people as possible to get through that entrance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you're spot on. And so that's especially when you're early to the market. I mean, you're going to get the innovators and the early adopters who that's their preferred method to learn is through self-exploration, discovery. I don't know the answer. I'm going to go to Google. I'm going to go to YouTube. But once you start to hit the early majority, that's when it's like, okay, we do need sales. We need a more encompassing customer success team because these are the people who don't necessarily love change. They're used to the old way. You're going to have to handhold them through because if they don't learn it, they're just not going to use it and they won't adopt it. So yeah, that's always the fun part of also like it's the whole concept of the book, Crossing the Chasm, right?
Yeah, exactly. So tell me, how are you measuring things?
And just with marketing, with GTM, with what?
Yeah, like all the efforts. Interesting because just want to continue the conversation that I had with Charlie because we talk about
Mm-hmm.
multi-touch attribution, how it's flowed, and how do we don't get all the data that we need through that, including the
Mm-hmm.
self-reported attribution, how it helps, and all those things. So I'm interested how you do it as a startup.
Yeah, we are tech minimalists, to be honest. We don't have a multi-touch attribution system. I was in Salesforce all day yesterday. You better believe it, staring at those dashboards and pressing refresh. Um, so yeah, we can get into multi-touch attribution in a second. But to answer your first question, like what do we measure? The top of my dashboard, I have 6 reports. They're all focused on pipeline and revenue. That's it, month over month, quarter over quarter views, and what's coming from marketing type channels. So inbound primarily, demo request. We're dual motion, so demo requests and our free trial signups is really what I'm looking at. And then just how do they progress? How many opportunities? How much pipeline? How much revenue? What's closing? Those are the biggest things. And then we do drill further down into reporting, just to understand, okay, like what were our total hand raisers, where are we seeing drop off, what's average age, ACV, segmentation, geo differences. But really, at the end of the day, I keep it simple because I say we can look at all those other metrics all we want, but at the end of the day, like if we lose sight of our North Star, revenue and pipeline, nothing else matters because that all informs how we accomplish that master goal.
Yeah, I think a lot of people should listen to you and learn about that because I think focusing on the main goals is the most important, especially if you are just starting. You are a startup. You're
Mm-hmm.
figuring out things, testing things, and just measuring everything messes up what you do,
The
and
mad
it
scientist.
actually hides those things that you should focus on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this was something it was top of mind for me a couple of months ago. Not seen it early in my career, but what happens, and I was one of the people that was very much at fault for letting this happen. We mistake metrics as goals. We mistake indicators as goals. And what happens is it starts from a good place. CEO says we need to hit $100 million in revenue this year. Marketing says, okay, cool. We'll make up 40% of that. So our goal is $40 million. And then they're like, okay, performance marketing. In order to do that, we go into our funnel mode. We need to drive 1 million MQLs. And the MQL becomes the goal, even though that's an indicator of are we on track to hitting that master goal at the end of the day, which is the 40 million, which is the 100 million. So we lose sight of that. And what we do is you and I both know you can gamify anything as a marketer. Let's go get more MQLs. Let's go get more clicks. Let's go to click farms. Let's go to content syndication. We can get MQLs as much as we want. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you drive 1 million or 10 million if you're missing that overarching goal. So that's one of the biggest things that I say is it comes from a good place, but you cannot confuse the difference between metrics, which are a guide of are we on track to hitting the goal. Metrics are not the goal themselves.
Exactly. And I think, choosing the right metrics basically empowers or dooms your marketing team very often.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like making too many metrics, tracking too much, like that's where you think you're being data driven, you think you're being data led. You're just confusing the team, to be honest, and you're focusing on too many things that makes you lose sight of what is the single most important goal for a company. It is to drive profits so you can stay open, so you can innovate, so you can continue to better help the market that you serve.
Exactly. I think we talked about here, sometimes when you're entering as the new CMO and you already have the sales led motion empowered, in that kind of situation, not to mess things up or to
Mm-hmm.
create trust, maybe the best thing is to align marketing goals to the sales goals and go through that and then work out from that perspective, just from the perspective not to complicate it too much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And sales will love you for it. I mean, I remember when I was at Refined Labs going into new clients and you'd have the CMO who was super excited, the CEO who's just like, all right, you guys have the growth goal. And then you have the VP of sales who's just sitting there like, great, another marketing agency. And by the end of that call, I usually ended up liking working with the VP of sales, the CRO more than the marketing leader half the time, because they were just like, oh, you're only focused on pipeline for our team and revenue and what actually our sales reps and AEs want to work. Perfect. Like, we'll make this happen. And then they're the ones having the conversations on the ground every day, day in and day out. What's working? What's not? Who are you talking to the most? What segments? Like, they are the best source of information for you. So that's the other beautiful side, is it realigns marketing to sales as a true, like, a go-to-market team. That's what you're both responsible for at the end of the day. And neither will be successful without the other. And that's something that we've just forgotten as time has gone on.
Yeah, we did. So tell me, there's, I don't know if it's controversial or not, but how do you think demand generation versus account-based marketing these days? Because I see a lot of people that say, okay, those things, all depend on the size of the market that you are going after, can be more or less the same things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I remember going through the phase, like 6sense, Terminus, Rollworks. Everyone was like ABM when it first really started to become a big thing, like 8-10 years ago or so. And it was just glorified targeting. At the end of the day, it was, hey, we're a display platform, upload your audience list, and we're going to put ads in front of them. True account-based marketing to me is a comprehensive, like, it spans the entire team: marketing, BDRs, sales. If they're customers, like, you have customer marketing, customer success, their customer support. They usually have some type of benefactor from your executive leadership team who is a sponsor for them. And so it's how you're engaging with them, not just on display ads, but literally at every single touch point, and trying to make it more special. But basically, it's like, you can only have a one-to-one approach with so many accounts. And that's why I say, like, that's your ABM, because you can go and touch as many accounts as you want through digital. Through BDRs is a little bit more limited. That's kind of one to many. But the biggest difference, I would say, is it's understanding what's the difference between targeting and segmentation versus a specific and defined strategy for a set of accounts that all share similar attributes, positioning, like something within there. So, for example, one of the first companies I worked at was we sold nonprofit software. And so think of like YMCA, Boys and Girls Clubs. So each of those have branches in each city. And so we would have ABM place for YMCA, where we target the master YMCA, but then we say, okay, YMCA of St. Louis, YMCA of New York, YMCA of Dallas. Those would all fall into that type of ABM account. So that's where we say they all have a shared goal, similarity, and then we were able to approach them with something that's unique to them from a content standpoint, to how we help them, guide them, service them. It's much more intentional and relevant, so to speak.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing all the examples. That's actually
Yeah.
a great thing. I have usually a hard time, making people share real examples.
That's how I learn. It's like, theory's great. I need practice. Like, show me what this looks like. That's how I start to learn. So I always try to do that when I get on my soapbox here.
Yeah, same here. And there is one thing that I discover as I join companies as a consultant or strategist or whatever it is. Working for so many years in the field, I usually have the templates, examples for everything. And like product team, the marketing team, even the sales team, they say, like, it's different than working with an agency. Like, you have examples for everything. And that
And I love it.
changes the thing, because they can
Yeah.
visualize it. They can see, that's actually how we do it. Right? It's
Yeah.
not
And they
just
probably
a
trust you
theory.
more. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, usually that's how I gain the trust from the start. So that become a thing. I realize, okay, I have that superpower on my Google Drive, so I can use it.
Yeah. That was one of my favorite things. I've marketed for services companies. I marketed for software. I love marketing for services companies, like when you're an agency, because you are the product at the end of the day. You sharing your
Exactly.
expertise is that's what people are buying at the end of the day. So talking about those specific stories, yeah, take out a name, but they can quickly see, oh, you've worked with companies exactly like me, because I know them, I've seen them, and you've been able to accomplish the same thing that I've been struggling with. Like, there's no better case study or proof point than that.
True. So let's get into we all test things and try things out. So, not to talk about good things that come out of testing. I mean, it's a good thing, but maybe you can share a story or something like that, or an example when you tested something and it didn't work out.
Every day. Just kidding. Not every day. Don't, hopefully
I
my
mean, it
CEO doesn't know
happens a
this.
lot, of course.
Yeah, no, that's part of learn. Like, that's what learning is. It's I say learning is failing and then being able to take a lesson from it so you can improve upon it. Failing is not taking the lesson from it and doing the same thing over and over, or insanity, doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. But one that comes more top to mind for me is probably we held an event, a micro event in London earlier this year. I'm not a field marketer. I'm not an event marketer. So this was the first time, and we are a bootstrapped company. And so funding is limited. We have to validate things before we can scale. So I was like, all right, like let's try this out. Let's figure it out, Sam. Let's go put on our experiment boots and go. So we know that events can work really well for the community we serve just based on the talking to our customers all the time, seeing them work with other organizations at the macro, just like industry conference level through what competitors and adjacents are doing. But again, this wasn't my full expertise. So there was a lot of things that I learned along the way that are going to make our next events successful. But definitely wouldn't say that the event was a failure, but it wasn't as great as I thought it would be. So for example, like we had lower attendance than I would have liked. The post-event content wasn't exactly the level that I'd been hoping. And this wasn't because of like our post-production team, but it was because of my setup. I didn't know exactly like what kind of mics, cameras do I need? Where do I position them? Just getting all of that set up. And that's all part of the learning curve of it. So all this informed, like I know we're going to keep doing events next year, but I was able to go through, and this is like a big thing that we have within our company is just first principles learning. You have to experience it so you can know for yourself exactly like what do we need to do to set ourselves up for a success with that playbook that we can then scale over time. But you can't theory your way through that. So that's why I say like I love failure to an extent, as long as it's not missing our pipeline revenue goals. But with things like this, it was like, I'll be the first to tell you it's uncomfortable. Yeah, no one likes it. No one likes going back to their CEO or board and saying like, hey, it didn't quite work out as well as we wanted. But here's what we got out of it. Here's the plan moving forward. Here's exactly what we're going to do to make sure that, we're going to keep iterating and improving over time. But yeah, I'd say that was probably a more recent example of something that, on paper, again, it wasn't exactly what we wanted, but we know what we're going to do moving forward.
Yeah, but when you try out 1 or 2 times or even 3 times, like the fourth one will be a huge success. That's usually how it goes.
Yeah,
Especially
time.
especially with events, right? You can feel usually you feel the energy, and
Yeah.
like, oh, I just need to figure out a couple of technical things, maybe promote it a little bit more, but the energy is here.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So yeah, it's just being able to not let it get to your ego in the sense of like taking it personally if things don't work out well, but just mentally noting, like you said, what's going well, what's not, how do we package this all up so we can just keep improving it as we work through these first couple to get it to the good spot.
Perfect. A thing that you didn't expect and it surprised you.
So we did a CTV commercial this year. I say CT, like it was a proper TV commercial. We invested a good bit of money. What we were talking about earlier, our paid search budget, I'd pulled about a quarter's worth of what used to be a paid search budget to fund the production of this commercial. Cause I was like, if we're going to do this, look, we're not going to just have our animator pull together a 30-second demo video of like our product with some tacky music behind it. Like if we're going to show up on people's TVs, we need to show up how people expect a proper commercial to show up on their TV. And so that was a big swing for us. We'd never done anything like it. It was right at the beginning before CTV really started to take off, and we were just like, hey, let's try this thing out. Because again, our biggest item that we were trying to take on with marketing was brand awareness. How do we generate more brand awareness? We're not trying to get people into our funnel right away, but just become familiar with us. So we ran a CTV commercial. It was definitely on like the entertaining side of things. It wasn't just like, we're Loxo, we're the best recruiting software ever, go get a demo today. It was very tongue-in-cheek kind of comedy to it. So the examples we used were, and the recruiters that we often target are like the headhunters, the external recruiters who are hired, the agencies. And so they're often tasked with finding candidates who are near impossible to find, people with very niche skill sets, people who are notoriously hard to get in touch with, people who basically aren't going and applying inbound for a job on your job boards. And so what we did was we had a couple different angles where we had this couple that was like, one of them was out going and trying to find Bigfoot. And you see this husband with a pair of binoculars and a ghillie suit and everything. And he's just looking around trying to find Bigfoot. And his wife's sitting next to him. She's just like, honey, you know that I can just use Loxo and find him really quick for you and get in touch with him. So he's over here like doing a duck call and everything. She's sending him a message, just like setting up an interview. And then the next commercial with them is her on a Zoom interview with Bigfoot. So just like very tongue-in-cheek things like this, where it's these notoriously hard to find or just people that cannot be found. In pop culture, we used aliens for the other one to have a little fun with it. So people would start to associate, okay, like Loxo is going to help us find, source, engage like these really hard people to find, and that started the association. But it was a little fun with it too.
Yeah, but I mean, you need to have a little bit of fun. I usually find that, especially in the tech space, like there are so many introverts, especially leading the companies, that getting into the entertainment part of the business, it's extremely hard, and you
Yeah.
need that today to get the attention.
Everyone's conservative. Everyone's running a blue ad with messaging speaking about ROI and everything else. And those aren't memorable because it looks and sounds exactly like everything else. So as things get more and more crowded, you have to be willing to do things different, and you have to stop thinking like a marketer, businessman, businesswoman, whoever you are at this point. But what would you engage with? What would catch your eye? What would catch your friend's eye? What would catch your, like, talk to your customers? You should know them like the back of your hand. Just kind of like, what are general personalities? Like, what do they enjoy doing? Where are they spending time? And then building the content, putting it in the appropriate medium for those places where they spend their time, and then letting them show up to see that as they go on through their day to day.
Yeah, you reminded me now of something that I was thinking of. So 2020, 2021, on each conference were Chris Walker, Andrei Zinkiewicz, and me,
Mm-hmm.
talking about demand creation, demand generation, those kind of things. Maybe somebody else, but I cannot do the same thing as Chris does, because I don't have the approach to all those companies and their data, right? So I cannot share my screen and show the data. Andre has processes, all these kind of things, so he talks about that kind of stuff. So I said, okay, what can I do to be different and to tell people from different example and be more approachable to the
Mm-hmm.
topic. So I said, okay, I have stories. I can do the storytelling, right? So, and you reminded me now of a story. How did I know that the dark funnel exists,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we're organizing an event, youth festival in the city, on the stadium, which was going to be rebuilt after that. So everybody got the permission to do the event. They say you cannot do it, and we were the most active youth organization in the city. So okay, I wrote a post on Facebook at the time. That was Facebook, that was the main channel, right? And I mentioned everybody. So Home of Culture, who was important for that. My father worked in a Home of Culture, for the sake of the context. The sports center, who was behind all of that. The mayor of the city, everybody. Not in a
Mm-hmm.
way that I offended them, but I mentioned all of them, just so they know what's happening. In 3 minutes, my father called me and said, what did you write on Facebook? My director called me, so Home of Culture. Um, and I asked, what's happening? Like, the mayor called the director. Mayor doesn't have social media presence.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out from my father that he even had time to call my mother to ask what did our son talk about on Facebook again. So I said, that's how the dark funnel actually works, right?
Yeah, yeah. Someone sees something, they talk about it to their peers, to others. It gets around through other channels, text, Zoom, phone calls. But it's very, I mean, it's where, yeah, it exists. We all know it.
Yeah, exactly. So I try to use stories that resonate with people,
Mm-hmm.
like common people, common stories, and then they
Yep.
can connect the dots. So, but talking about all these things and examples and how we do it, how do you see the usage of the empathy and being yourself today when we try to automate everything, use ChatGPT for a lot of stuff to generate content? How do you see and how do you actually manage to keep the authenticity part of the business and on your presence and everything?
Yeah, and this is something people are drawn to when they can see a brand has a point of view. They stand for something. They have a personality because you can pick any software nowadays, and prices are all near similar, features are all near similar. So the differentiating factors often come down to the human element of it. Do I like the sales rep I'm talking to? Do I like the implementation specialist? Do I like the customer success manager? Does the CEO have a good presence? Do they seem a little arrogant? Do they seem very knowledgeable and wanting to solve the problem? So that's all the human element of it, and then going a layer deeper and incorporating that over the course of their journey. So spending time to get to know them in the sales discovery process when they're onboarding, or if they've just signed. Like, I like to send handwritten thank you notes to a handful of customers every week to just say, like, we're so excited you're here. Like, And you can see, like, I always call it the smudge test. I'll like lick my thumb on something that looks like it's handwritten and see, like, is it actual ink, or was this one of those that's just like the font that looks handwritten. But that all comes from genuine one-to-one outreach, and you cannot do empathy at scale. Like, that's something that I will always say, like, that's why it's valued so much, because it's felt. If it's at scale, it's disingenuous. So examples, right? So over at the end of last week and over the weekend, there was Hurricane Helen, I forget the name of it already, but it came through the states and it was really impacting Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, North and South Carolina. And so our team said, like, hey, we want to reach out to customers, like, make sure that they're okay, check in with them and everything else. I'm like, yes, love where we're going with this, but we cannot send this as a mass email. Like, that's the last thing that we can do, because if it is, then it doesn't seem disingenuous, but it's losing that empathetic appeal. So I was like, we can do this. When we do, though, it's going to be each of our CSMs, each of our account reps, each of our customer success managers, marketers, whoever, we're going to send one-to-one emails so they can see it's coming from us, not through automation, not through HubSpot, but truly coming from us, reaching out. How are you doing? Are you and your loved ones okay? Is there anything that we can do to help and support? It is very, very, very differently received when that's sent to 3,000 people at a time versus one-to-one to a handful of 100 is realistically what we could do. But it's just how it's received is so different, because one looks like a giant PR play and one is like, okay, this is a partner that genuinely cares about us. And you can guess which one leads to higher retention, stronger relationships over time, versus it can actually hurt you and turn against you when you try to use it from the other angle.
Yeah, very well said. Very well said. I didn't think about it, but it's so true. You know, you cannot scale empathy. And also, Amir, who is watching us on LinkedIn, saying, you know, it's the same with personalization.
Yeah.
You know, because it's not personalization when you just change the name of the person or a company,
No,
right? In a
that's table
template.
stakes. Yeah.
Exactly, and a lot of people mix up those two things. But there are
Mm-hmm.
those kind of like small things that we can do that actually makes us human and makes people, remember us. And I like to say an example. Even though if we automate some of the things, there are some things that makes no sense for us to do it. To write it over again. For example, sending a welcome message to your connections on LinkedIn, right? I mean, you can do it one by one, but usually you need a
Mm-hmm.
template, at least for the
Yeah.
first message,
Mm-hmm.
But what I usually recommend to the people, make it known that it is a template. Say it's not AI, it's not automated. It is me sending a template because I'm a smart guy and I can not send 20 messages per day. I can just send, three if it's like this, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
people say, oh, finally, somebody actually said it.
Yeah.
We get so many messages, those kind of things, and it feels different. So just like be you. That's
Yeah.
what I always say
Small
to the
human
people.
touches. Yep. That's all it
Exactly. I
takes.
mean, it's actually hard to be somebody else. I mean, it's not hard to be generic with AI, but to
Mm-hmm.
be somebody else, it's actually hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree more.
Perfect. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your time at Refine Labs, and
Okay.
what interests me is what did you get out of Refine Labs that you are taking now to Loxo, for example? Looking for the standpoint, what can you implement, but also looking at you as a marketer, what are some of the things that you got out of it?
Yeah. The biggest thing I would say is, like, just how important philosophical alignment is across your go-to-market team through leadership. Because I would see the difference in what happened when the CEO, the CRO, the CMO all believe in the strategy of, I mean, we're going to talk about demand gen. It's any strategy that you want to use in your go-to-market at the end of the day.
Mhm.
The difference between when they're all aligned on it and then their teams are all aligned on it and the results that do come. Granted, it's not a turnkey, and that, like, the day after you start going in this direction, you're going to see wild results. It takes time. We know sales cycles. We know how it all takes. But when I would see organizations where, you might have the CEO, CMO on board, the CRO is a little bit skeptical, when those seeds of doubt are in there, then it lets the rest of the team know it's okay to doubt. It's okay to not follow this 100%. It's okay to straddle a line between how we used to do things and how we want to do things. And when you don't go all in on it, or you kind of like actively try to not make it successful, guess what? It's not successful. And then everyone's just like, oh, it didn't work. That philosophy doesn't work. It's like, well, did it not work, or did you really not give it the proper effort to make it happen? And there are times when you can have everyone go on and it doesn't work, and that's okay. But I saw too many times of, I don't want to call it sabotaging, but just when you don't put forth the effort that's required to make something successful, and then they just fall and blame, like, it just doesn't work, we're going back to the old way, and then they keep doing status quo that wasn't working in the first place, and now it's getting more efficient as time goes on. So it always comes back to philosophical alignment. And we even noticed that in the sales cycle, we would start turning away organizations where after we'd meet the team, if we sensed that with some of them, we'd have a candid discussion and say, like, if we can all get on the same page, we'll do this. If not, we're going to turn you away, just because we know it's not going to work. It's going to be a waste of your time and our time.
That's actually a great point. I mean, and it's very important for listeners to understand, how do you actually choose the right customers for you, the right clients, the right companies. Here's another anecdote. I don't know if you know this, but it might be interesting. So Megan often referred clients to Funky Marketing who are not the fit for Refined Labs. And the thing was, those are probably companies who don't have the big enough budget, or are not using, for example, the right CRM. One of them was using Microsoft 360, for example.
Okay.
And I'm like, I don't want those companies either. I want the bigger ones, and those that are using like two of the CRMs that are most known and most familiar with. Right.
Yeah.
So we had back and forth, and she was like, "Oh, okay, I'll refer you some others," and those kind of things. But it was a nice thing, and I always want to mention it because she recognized Funky Marketing as somebody who can do things, on the same level, just in Europe or for the other types of the companies.
Yeah, and especially having the cultural context that you do, where it's like, we could service companies over there, but like when you know the philosophy and the nuances of the region, like that's times where I'd say like it's actually better to use them. And when you can create a relationship with someone who could be a competitor, but you turn them into a partner, amazing things can happen.
Yeah, and that was all in the time like you were trying to create a category, increase in the team and everything else, and you cannot do that alone. And that's what I'm always saying to the people. No matter how it looks like on the surface that you might be competitors, but you are all, evangelists. How do we call it? A category, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so tell me a couple of things. I remember, reading your post. If I remember well, on Friday, talking about getting yourself in shape, physically, but also mentally, being in the game. How important are those things? And just from the sake of the context, I'm going back to all those things again and reminding myself, because I have like pneumonia for 2 months, and then I couldn't do anything physically for 2 months, and now I was on a conference for 3 days and I'm dead. So I was like, okay, this Saturday I said it's time to get back to shape, right? So I can actually do all the other stuff.
Good for you. Yeah, to me, it's something I've always loved. So you were an athlete, I was an athlete. It's ingrained in part of me, and it's such like any athlete who's listening to this will relate. Like you can remember your last game you ever played, and then you're just like, your whole life changes in the sense that like for years you had structured everything around this: practice, wake up, nutrition, exercise, and then one day it's just done. You're not playing it. Like, yeah, you can still have your old man leagues and everything else, but for so many of us, like we love just that constant need to improve ourselves. We like coaching in the sense of we seek and crave feedback. Like, what can we improve? Not to be told that we're not good enough, but like we just enjoy the process of learning, improvement, ikigai. And so from just current life, I mean, that was something that I was always just found I was fascinated in. So when I wasn't, I mean, we can only read so many business books, right? We can only listen to so many podcasts about marketing. It drives you crazy. So I found myself just constantly going back to when I wanted to be entertained, when I wanted to I was craving something learning, unique, different. It was always health exercise oriented. So I was like, okay, let's keep pushing this. And I loved, like, I'll go to NIH, which is a website that's just full of research studies in health. What's the impact of alcohol on sleep? What's the impact of, like, all these different things? I would just like find myself reading for hours on the weekends. I'm like, this is interesting. And so to me, that then I brought it over to LinkedIn because I was like, if I only also talk about marketing and B2B, I'm going to blow my brains out. And I just started doing, I was like, I want to post 3 times a week. I can only talk about marketing so much. I'm going to post about that twice a week. Fridays, I'm just going to do health thoughts. And it just kind of became its own little thing. But the one thing I loved about it is that for all of the content I shared about B2B marketing, I got more reach on those. I got more likes. I got more comments. But for the Friday health thoughts that I shared, the people that would engage with me there, the conversations were deeper, and I have more meaningful relationships with the people who engaged with those, because that's where it was like they saw past just, okay, this is somebody who's just sharing B2B marketing content, to like, you see the person behind the icon and everything else. So that was something that I just learned to enjoy and embrace, was like getting to know people to layer past like their job title, the company they work for, their experience credentials, to just like, what are you interested in? And that's led to countless Zoom calls that have nothing to do with B2B marketing, but just we talk about health, we talk about life, we talk about work, friends, anything and everything. But yeah, it just came around in an interesting way where it came back to like that humanization part. And some of the best prospecting I've received, I am notorious for, like, if I get an unsolicited call on my cell phone, if I get an email, it's awful. I don't get mad. I just report it as spam. I don't like it. I don't
Yeah,
have time
same
for it.
here, same here.
But if I get an email or a DM that references like one of these posts, or they talk about their experience, I'm like, you're in. Let's talk. Like, there's so much opportunity. People give so much opportunity to truly personalize, like we were talking about earlier. People just don't take the opportunity to do it. But when you do, that's the new foot in the door in today's world. You just have to go and find those.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we are so open, like most of the people online, sharing different stuff. I'm always saying, like,
Mm-hmm.
I talk about basketball, comics, epic
Yeah.
fantasy books, hiking, those things that I love, and it's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's just you didn't want to look.
Yeah. You just want to put us in your sequence and go from there. But no, it's honestly, it's a sanity break for me at the end of the day, just talking about that kind of stuff. And so many people, especially in the States, there's bad advice. And I'm not saying I give the best advice. Some of the stuff that I share is probably, I'm going to look back on 5 years and be like, Sam, why did you share that? That was awful advice. But just in general, I know what the common, not working conditions are for so many of us B2B marketers, but we sit all day. We're sitting in front of computers. So think about like, hey, that Zoom call that probably could have just been like a walking meeting instead. Here's how I do this. Like, here's how I think about it. One of my peers, Grant Duncan, he's devised a walking desk that he uses his hotspot on, and he wears this like a backpack, and he just goes and he does take Zoom calls from it while he walks around his neighborhood. It's absolutely genius. But just trying to help people understand, it's like, work's great. Yeah, it makes your paycheck, but at the end of the day, like, your health is what matters the most. You can't work if your health is in a bad spot.
Totally agree. Totally agree. So tell me, what's next for you, for Loxo? What do you have in store?
2025 planning. So we just wrapped up the quarter. So yeah, probably trying to figure out what are we getting into. We're continuing just our profitable led growth. Some things that are interesting to me though are like it's not the re-rise of SEO, but SEO is not going away. I know people continue to say like GPT is going to do this. No, like SEO is still very much here to stay. But I think there is an element of people using AI and GPT. How do you get your company? How do you show up for certain terms within there? Because it's not citing sources right now. So I'm just curious, like, that's where I'm just going down rabbit holes and understanding, like, how do these work? How can we insert ourselves into that conversation? What does that all look like as part of the LLM? So those are a couple different things I'd say that over the next quarter, I'll just be having fun with.
Love that. I'm having the next episode with Sam Dunning. We're going to talk about SEO and those kind of things. But what I can tell you, I just got the first client coming through ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked, and what she found was what she was searching actually for was something that was a topic on a 3 articles that got the most traction from Google.
Yeah.
So
And that's where
yeah,
it's pulling from the internet in different places. So it's all interconnected.
yeah, and basically the way I see it, you just do your thing as you were doing it, and AI is connecting the dots behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Okay. Any messages for the end? And also tell me and all the people where they can find you except for LinkedIn.
Yeah,
Or it's
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn's the best spot. I have a Substack. That's usually my longer form articles. I publish those every Saturday. If you're curious about recruitment and how that all works with the software, loxo.co, not .com. That's our company page. We also have a podcast, Becoming a Hiring Machine. But it's not hard to find us online. Anyone who's listening to this is savvy, and they'll know where to catch us.
Perfect. Well, I can say what Amir also said in the comment. That was kind of a master class. So many examples, so many
Thank you.
small
Good
nuances.
questions. No, this was a great conversation. I loved it.
Yeah, thanks. I learned after 4 years of doing this. I finally learned how to do it.
It's an art. It is an art.
Yeah, but I want to tell everybody listening, now is the time when I tell you to go back to the beginning of the episode, listen to everything, stop when you see something that you need more explaining or more examples, reach out to Sam, reach out to me. And what I always say, see you in the next episode and keep it funky. Sam, thanks a lot and see you on LinkedIn.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Bye bye.